my god!
It is hard to overstate the cultural saturation of The Simpsons that was going on when the Simpsons Arcade Game released back in March of 1991. At the time, The Simpsons were everywhere, and I mean goddamn everywhere. You could not turn on your TV set, drive on the highway, go to the mall, turn on the radio, and especially not go to the local flea market, without coming face to face with an image of Bart Simpson telling you to eat his shorts. And for somebody in my demographic, that oversaturation was very welcome at the time. So when this cabinet first dropped on unsuspecting customers with the freaking Konami logo visible all over it, it felt almost too good to be true. Childhood nostalgia? Most definitely. But going back to play this one, I realized just how decently the game holds up. Maybe not $500 for an arcade 1-up cabinet holds up, but it's still worth talking about. The Simpsons Arcade Game was part of Konami's strong presence in the local arcades of the early 90s. While the first season of the show wasn't that big on hyper-violent action, outside of I guess Itchy and Scratchy, the material lent itself well enough to the beat-em-up genre that nobody really questioned it. Remember, this is the time period where Michael Jackson had his own arcade game where he was a giant robot with a monkey. There were no f***ing rules around this time. We also might have been a little too busy doing the Bartman to care, but my memory is a little hazy. The game itself puts you in control of 4 of the 5 members of the family Simpson. Homer, Marge, Lisa, and Bart. Wait, this was 1991. I mean Bart, Homer, Marge, and Lisa. The 5th Simpson, Maggie, has been kidnapped by Smithers after the family runs afoul of him during a diamond heist. Presumably for his boss, Mr. C. Montgomery Burns. I know, at first glance, the richest and oldest man in Springfield needing to steal a diamond doesn't make one lick of sense. I mean, this is years before he blotted out the sun just for shits and giggles. But when you look at it through the lens of Mr. Burns sending Smithers on a dangerous and unnecessary task for something he could have easily done himself, yeah, that absolutely tracks. Besides, there's plenty of other small details for longtime fans to pick out during a playthrough. At the time of development, the dev team were working from early concepts and designs from the show, including Season 1 and the Christmas special. Some even going as far back as the old Matt Groening comic strips and their brief time on the Tracy Ullman show. As for the titular family themselves, everybody made the transition to pixels far better than any of their home or portable contemporaries did. Hell, the victory animations alone might pack more charm than every original NES and Game Boy sprite combined, possibly excluding Bart vs. the Juggernauts. Of course, the biggest draw for most will be the license, and there's lots for the average Simpsons fan to love here. We start off with the iconic and the hooks are in. For me, this is truly one of the great all-time attract modes, even if having a show to work from feels a bit like cheating. One thing about this game that I thought made it stand out from other titles at the time was the color.
The colors, children.
The game has a big, bright, and colorful sprite design, as inspired by the show. Everything from the characters, portraits, all the way down to the stage design and the friggin' life bar, all of it just jumps right off the screen. I genuinely believe that had this game shipped without the license but still kept the same visual sensibilities, it still would have done well in the arcades. Also, maybe then we could have gotten a proper home console release. Each playable Simpson has their own strengths, weaknesses, and weapon. Homer fights with his fists, Marge fights with a vacuum cleaner, Bart uses his signature skateboard, and Lisa uses her iconic skipping rope. The combat is fine, but admittedly, it doesn't quite feel as satisfying as later Konami beat-em-up titles like X-Men and Metamorphic Force. Okay, actually that's not true. The boss combat feels incredibly satisfying. That level of visual light flashing, sound effect, and boss reaction is a level of satisfaction that's up there with popping bubble wrap for me. I mean, the regular enemy combat feels fine too, but for the most part, it doesn't quite hit the same. It's not unpleasant or unfun by any stretch, but when it comes to beat-em-ups, I've always found there to be a sweet spot where basic combat is concerned. And that spot lies right in the middle of input time, hit pace, sound effect, and a sense of weight. The best examples I can think of tend to fall on the Capcom side of games, such as Final Fight and Knights of the Round. although titles like Streets of Rage and Scott Pilgrim fall into this category for me as well. The combat in the Simpsons Arcade Game is enjoyable, but it's not quite as tight as those previously mentioned titles. Think of the original TMNT arcade game compared to Turtles in Time, and you might have a better idea of what I'm talking about here. Anyways, the combat is fine, just imperfect. Fortunately, the game also throws in a few button-mashing minigames to mix things up. However, if you want the most out of the Simpsons Arcade Game, multiplayer is the way to go. Any two Simpsons can activate a team attack if two players hover over each other for a few seconds. One very specific urban legend I've heard about this game as a kid was about the police car in the first stage. I always heard that if you had all 4 players, it was possible to lift the police car in stage 1 and use it as a projectile. And then it turned out to be something that you could do with just 2 players. Honestly though, for what amounts to 30 minutes roughly of total gameplay, it's nice to see little details like that thrown in. The Simpsons Arcade Game is a pretty straightforward beat-em-up, but the license goes a long way in helping it stand up to the test of time. Of course, playing with friends is how you'll be able to get the most out of it, just like any respectable beat-em-up that doesn't allow you to hit your teammate by accident. If you don't want to shell out an obscene amount of money on a repro cabinet, there are other ways of playing this one. The game did get a Commodore 64 and PC port, although neither were very well received. There was also a short-lived PS3 and Xbox Arcade release, as well as a mobile remake that only let you play as Homer. Although, while not officially out, there is a dev I've been following online who is working on this 8-bit remake project. Side note, if you want to support that kind of thing, they have a game on Switch right now called Super Hiking League DX. I picked it up, and it's pretty tight. The Simpsons have a very mixed history in terms of video game quality, but the arcade game has always managed to stand out amongst the rest. It's no escape from Grandma's house, but I'd still recommend it to any Simpsons fan who finds a cabinet somewhere out there in the wild. Hey everyone, Tim here. Thanks for watching and for sticking it out until the end of the video. If you like what we do here, please consider leaving a like, subbing, commenting, the usual YouTube stuff. We really want to grow the channel out more, and any bit of support, even a view, really helps us out, and it's appreciated more than you know. Anyways, thanks for sticking around. This has been Tim from Haruokay, and until next time, stay tuned.